Good evening, everyone. My name is Tina Lee. Can everybody hear me? Can I get a thumbs up before I go along? Can everybody hear me? Are we all good? My camera on is and mic is on. Lori or Juliet, can you hear me?
All good.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tina Lee. I'm the co-founder of Manitoba Women in Tech, and I'm an executive and a marketing and event specialist with North Forge Technology Exchange. We welcome you to our 8th Manitoba Women in Tech Meetup Group event of the season. We're now a meetup community of over 900 members, and we're truly excited about bringing all who love tech together. If you are new to the remote platform, please find a quick tutorial video in the chat on how to use the features. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are a Manitoba Women in Tech is a nonprofit, agenda-free, and gender-inclusive meetup group who, together with our allies, we support each other, share experiences, applaud accomplishments, and promote tech activities in a safe and judgment-free environment. Our events are brought to you by the combined forces of Tech Manitoba, New Media Manitoba, and North Forge Technology Exchange. We host events each month for anyone working in and with tech who would like to meet each other and meet women and allies working in technology. We are a vibrant community in Manitoba, and joining these events is a great way to experience this firsthand. We respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting virtually on the ancestral lands of Treaty 1 territory, the traditional gathering place of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and the traditional homeland of the Red River Métis people. We have a code of conduct for all events that basically says be kind to each other, and we encourage you to access our code through the link in the chat. We also regularly survey our attendees to ensure that the content we provide and the format of our gatherings works for the majority of those who wish to attend. We will continue to hold our events every month, but might switch up the timing so that we have a variety of times available to ensure we reach as many of you as possible. We are fortunate to have Manitoba Women in Tech ambassadors in the crowd today who work in the tech industry. If it's likely that you have one at your table right now. And shout out to our amazing volunteers. Thank you so much for coming tonight to help facilitate conversations. You may have heard about this meetup group, Remo, and our local tech community, or they'll be able to connect you with other like-minded individuals. Our ambassadors have changed their profiles to include the designation ambassador so that you can identify them. When you click on the round avatars of people at each table, you'll see a small description come up. All right, now let's dive into introducing our amazing guest speaker, Diana De Silva, who is the Marketing Services Director with 6P Marketing. Diana has an extensive career that spans numerous industries and countries. She began with graphic design, and throughout the years, she has enjoyed a variety of marketing roles in organizations across North America and Europe. Her skill set lies in account and project management, creative services, strategic marketing, sales, and marketing and planning execution. When Diana's not working, she enjoys trying many new things, but her favorite hobbies are sculpting, building Lego, and fishing. And with that, we welcome Diana to the stage.
Hello.
Welcome. It's so great to see you, Diana. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to pop off a stage, and it's all yours.
Right. Thank you. Well, thank you, everybody, for welcoming me to the group to talk about website planning and how we can save you some time and money during that process. I'm going to go right into my presentation. Let's just... All right. Can someone please let me know that they can see my screen?
Thank you so much, Diana.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you to today's session on website planning. As I said before and introduced, my name is Diana De Silva. I am a marketing service director over at 6P Marketing here in Winnipeg. I deal with a lot of clients, both big and small, and everywhere in between, all different kinds of industries, all products, services, B2B, B2C, you name it. So a lot of those learnings and understandings, I've compiled a presentation today to really take us through the highlights and the core areas of really taking your website project from the very start to the very end, so that you understand all of the steps in between, why they're important, what you can skip, what you can save on, and what you really must do. So without further ado, I'm going to try to keep myself for once on time, and I'm going to keep going. So today's session objectives is to provide you with the knowledge you can use when building your website, regardless if it's on your own, with your own team, or if you want to include this information in a scope for your contractor or agency. We're going to go over the proven process, the stepped system that's been evolved over 20 years of creating websites for clients of all shapes and sizes. And we want to share tips and best practices when we can to make your website efforts more efficient, the process much more enjoyable, and increase the overall ROI of the dollars that you do invest. Let's take a little moment on goals, timelines, and budgets. The first area to start off with here is really one that you really can't skip, and most companies and brands skip, and that is converting your business goals into website goals. As you can see here on the screen, a lot of business goals are I want to get profits, I want to maintain my profits, I want to increase my brand awareness, I want to get new products in the market or new services, increase my market share. Those are very, very big overarching goals that your entire sales and marketing plan needs to address. But what we're asking here is that you need to focus those overarching goals and narrow them down so that they're more specific to what your website can actually do for you. So some of those more realistic goals, drill down, or I'm looking to increase awareness. I want to generate more sales directly from my site. I want to improve the sales conversion rate. So maybe you have a lot of people putting things in the shopping cart, but they're not actually paying. I want to improve my sales or technical support and have that on my website. I want to increase my employee applications or job applications if you're an HR type facility and firm. So you're really kind of drilling down is like, what specifically can my website do for me? And here's the idea and trick to this piece. The more goals that you assign for your website, the more complex your website project is going to be. So if you're thinking and your idea is like, I want to be able to do all of these, I want to have a ton of functionality, I want to have a ton of content, I want to have all these sections to my webpage, the first thing I do for stopping right here is to break out your website into development phases. What is the minimum viable product that'll hit the key 1 or 2 goals that you have on your website list? That's stage 1. Keep it bite-sized and manageable for you and your team because you will all have fatigue, especially if you're doing it yourself and you need to be focusing on other aspects of your business. If you make it too beefy and too monstrous up front, it is just going to be growing bigger and bigger and bigger until you can't handle that monster anymore. So, cautionary tale here, start with 1 or 2 goals that are very critical for your website and get really good at making those to really maximizing the results of those. And now what I talk about setting more realisticness is here is, many people come to me and like, oh, I want to get a website and I want it to get it up next month. Here is a realistic timeline of a simple website for a simple company that, say, is like a simple retailer, a local mom and pop store who doesn't have any strong branding. They kind of have a logo, but they're not really sure about their text and their fonts. They're not really sure about the wording on their website, or maybe they have nothing at all and it's a brand new company. You can expect with a small project like this to take anywhere between 1 to 4.5 months. On average, let's say a bigger, smaller company or a medium-sized company, you're looking anywhere between 3 to 6 to 8 months. So this is why I say to break it down into bite-sized pieces, because a lot of the time our businesses, I need to get a website in so I can have sales. So that's what I say. Break it down to the bare minimum so that you can decrease this timeline and say, maybe we can get it out in 2 months instead. And this is a really good slide that really breaks down the milestones in your project. And you really should set out a realistic timeline and schedule so that you know what you need to be doing for your website in any given week. So that allows you time to think about the other aspects of your business and where there might be conflicts in scheduling. For instance, if you need to prepare for a prototype to be made, or if there's a busy season coming up, it's not really realistic to do your website build at the same time if you're relying to do it internally, or you don't have the resources internally to support someone doing it for you. Like you can't get the content for them, you can't get the images. So keep all of those in mind when you're setting up this realistic timeline, and always give yourself buffer time, because it's the initial schedule that you set up for yourself is always going to be optimistic. Next up, the stage that everyone gets slightly wrong is identifying your best audiences. So now you kind of know what your goals are, your timeline. You really need to understand your audience. And the one thing that I find many entrepreneurs struggle with is that they make a website that they understand and that is logical to them. They are not necessarily, though, your best audience, or you're not necessarily your own best audience. You need to lay out a profile of who that audience is. And these are the basic components. Many of it starts with demographics, so the who. And if you're a B2C company, that's age, job title, education, income, all of that. If you're in the B2B audience, then you're thinking about the organization as a profile, geography, industry, decision influencers, and primary decision makers, how many locations, things like that. And also remember that if you have an organization as your profile, because you're in a B2B audience, you also need to make a profile for the decision makers within that group, because that will also affect it. So for your primary decision makers, you need to include how they think and feel. A lot of brands feel like, well, why do I care about the psychographics? I'm just going to put the features up and it'll meet the need. Because a lot of times people buy on feeling and emotion. There's fear-based, joy-based, prestige. Yes, they're buying for their company, but at the end of the day, they want to make that purchase make them look good. So you want to take some time and decide what is really important and valuable to them. And base all of your content, your visuals, your key messaging on all of that around what this audience wants to see. Maybe you're a very technical person, but your audience needs to have more simple information. You're really going to have to work to have that simple messaging, and maybe get a copywriter to help you if you can't do it yourself. Get a third person to come in and read your copy and read that profile and get their opinion on it, because we all naturally come with our own biases. So it's good to have more eyes on this piece of your website build so you can get more opinions about it. Now, once you kind of get a picture of who your audience is, we want to understand a little bit more about their journey. And what most impacts their journey, as I say, is they buy primarily to have their needs fulfilled. This drives all of their purchase decisions, regardless of what they're purchasing on this planet. It also influences their buying journey and the brands that must appeal to these needs in order to make sales. Now, we break out these audience needs into two. And a lot of the times, brands are really good on functional. So if we take car, which is a very simple example, the functional needs is, I need it to take me from work. I need it to cost low in fuel because fuel is almost $2 at this point. And we all live in Winnipeg, so it's got to be great in the snow. I don't want to go off into the ditch. That's great. I pick my cars all on functional because I don't have a huge emotional appeal. However, my significant other, emotions very much play. For him, a car is meant as personal status. He wants it to be fun to drive, while I prefer to feel safe. So all of these are really important to this, and they're going to be things that we're going to be looking for on your website to answer, whether it's through text, copy, visual expression. You are responsible for communicating all of those. And the nice thing to do about this is I say, take a piece of paper, do your profile, get it read by someone, and then take a stab at what you think their needs are, and then get that checked by someone. Because you don't want to do this work in your own island and cocoon. You want to get different perspectives. Now, the next one is setting your brand apart. Check my time. This is where we start to talk about what you should say and what makes your brand different from everybody else's. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not customer service. Customer service is a given. So your unique selling proposition, or USP, is a concise summary of why your brand is different from, and more importantly, superior to that of your competition. So a good USP quickly and effectively answers the most important prospect question is, oh, that's nice. Why should I care? The USP is not a feature of your product. It is the sum of everything that makes you and your offering very special. Defining that unique selling proposition, or you might have a few, will influence every aspect of your marketing. It's not meant to be used for word in public communications. It's meant to encompass the feeling of the message that you're trying to convey. So to better illustrate that, because it's kind of more of a confusing concept, specific marketing offers and promotions like 10% off, free shipping, 24-hour customer service, a strong return policy are not USPs. Why? Because as effective as they are, and they're not unique on their own. And if your competitor can copy it, that is no longer your USP, because it must be unique to you. So let's pick on some brand names here. I like picking on Uber. Uber, their main USP is offering Uber convenience. It's fast, it's easy. That's what it is. Nice, and it encompasses everything that they are. For the Apple iPhone, their unique selling proposition was offering a unique experience, because at that time when they introduced the iPhones, it really was a unique experience. It was a brand new technology into the market. It made them unique over their competition. So that is what you really need to drill down and narrow and brainstorm, all the different ways that your brand is unique over your competition and that nobody else can offer it. So far, it's been a lot of writing and listing and thinking and brainstorming, and you've got a really good sense of your audiences, what they need, what messaging is, what they're looking for. And now we're going to go into the fun stuff. It's your brand, personality, and look. So this is the sum total of every visual element, the tone, the communication style, the personality of your specific brand. I'm going to go into some common areas that people tend to skip when they're looking at their websites. A lot of people have logos, which is great, but they tend to skip on the tone and manner of your website. So, and if you have more than one person writing on your website, you might have a lot of different communication styles and tones. And so your website kind of comes across like it has a little bit of multiple personalities. So we don't want that. You want to have something that really authentically represents your brand. So if you have a law office, for instance, you want to be reserved, expert, and formal. You want to make sure that your tone and manner always comes across that way. Or if maybe you have a really cool clothing brand, you want to be sarcastic and witty and maybe even a little bold. Or let's say you are doing a family-run business that, just want to welcome everybody over, and it's just a really cool place to do long time, multi-generation family business. It could be friendly, traditional, and warm. So you want to identify that, because all of these pieces, all of this work that you've been doing so far is going to help guide you, your team, the contractor or agency that you intend to use for your website build. And by doing this work yourself ahead of time, it actually saves you a tremendous amount of money. Because if you were to go to someone from scratch, they really have to answer all of these questions for you and develop that brand for you. And they might not have like the complete picture and context or the experience to do that. It's always really better for you to do this. You'll save yourself time and money, and all this planning will save months off of your build, and you are going to get the piece of work that really encompasses your brand, and it is an effective selling machine for you. Speaking of logos, if you don't have one now, that is step one to determining what your brand is. So whether it is minimalist, traditional, we go with Google traditional classic is really hot right now, as well as logos with type balanced as the Crosstown Civic Credit Union. Again, that's really like hot right now. And a logo could be many things, but you will notice if it's minimalist here, I caution you not to be too crazy with your logos. Think about how your logo, what you can use for your logo for the icons for social media. If you're going to be embroidering your logo, if you're going to be putting on promo items, it is very hard to use gradients in a logo for various reasons on many projects. You want to make sure that your logo looks good on a dark background as well as a light background. If it stacks, if it can't stack, some logos only include type, like Disney, while minimalists like Nike can get away with using just the swoosh because they already have brand awareness. So if you don't have brand awareness, your name must be in your logo, and you can choose to add an icon. Typefaces. Nobody likes to talk about type, but it is very, very important. Generally, the rule of thumb, we only recommend up to 3 different types of fonts for your website. It could be your headers on your sliders for more the artistic ones. Those could be more artistic. And then you'll pick a bolder font and then a sub font, usually within the same family. So if you go with sans serifs, you'll pick 2 fonts there, and then maybe you can have one decorative. That's it. Try not to do too creative fonts on your website. It is difficult for people to read. Also keep in mind that there will be limitations to the amount of fonts that you can use on your website. So if you're used to having a certain font for your brand that is not available on the website, you might have to have a change in your brand where if anything's digital, it uses this font, and if anything is print, it uses a different font. So there are limitations to font selections in website building, which is why I bring this up, so that you can decide ahead of time the fonts you intend to use if that crops up. Finally, color. I will say only pick 3 colors. Max 3, you can do less if you like. So you want to do your primary. It's just like painting a house. You pick your primary color, then you might have a secondary color that's a little bit less, and then you'll have a tertiary color that's little pops of highlights here and there. Really make note that you want to pick colors that are suitable to your market. So in this case, I always recommend that you do a little bit of competitive sneaking around and see what colors, see what fonts, see what layout, see everything that your competitors are doing and see what you like and you don't like, because you don't want to accidentally design something that looks like a competitor just because they're common colors in your field. For example, an industry that really suffers from that is plumbing, heating, and HVAC. They are really stuck with reds and blues and sometimes green and some sort of fire water element. So it was really hard for that industry to kind of like break out of those color palettes and get a little bit more creative so that each of the brands stand out. Next up, photography. This is my favorite. Okay, you need to pick a style of photography so that your brand is consistent. The way to build brand trust and awareness is to always have consistency in all of your visuals and copying, which is why I suggest to do all of these ahead of time and pick this ahead of time. You have many styles of photography that you can use. You can do product photos. You can do people focused, especially if you're people-based or business. You can do action shots, especially if you have something that's into sport or construction. Acute perspective is very well done in those with industrial design, home building is another one. So pick styles that you like. And I'm always going to get the questions like, where do I get these images? There are some free stock image sites out there that you can use the imagery while just crediting the designer and author. And you also have the option of paying for stock photography for more of the specialized photos. And I actually encourage that to some extent to use it here and there. And you can get them as low as a couple of dollars. And yes, they can be more expensive, but you can get it in a very economical way. iStock is a popular choice for that use, but I encourage you to shop around by just Googling free stock photography for the free stuff and then stock photography to see before pay. The other option is that phones have gotten so evolved in technology that with a little preparation and planning and research online, you can actually train yourself to take amazing images that you already own and you can use for a plethora of options and will be high enough quality to both use for your web as well as print. So you have many options now with technology. And I don't know why I went back. Let's go forward. And the last one as part of our brand package is you have all these beautiful images, but what designers really need sometimes is they need to have some illustrations as well as elements. So you might want to include infographics, which are a huge and very popular feature, especially if you have a website that has a lot of information or a lot of complex information and statistics. Infographics are great. Abstracts are really great for the creative fields, as well as you can pull dynamic elements. Maybe there's cool like shapes and stripes and certain effects that you like. Pull all of those down so that whoever is designing your site has different elements that it can pull from so they can create a concept for you of what it could look like. Help them out by pulling out some things that you already like and enjoy and kind of already match with the theme. Now that you've gone through all of that and you've pulled all of those things together and you have some of that core data and you've got the visual look, still doing good. We're going to get a little boring stuff, and this is the more technical stuff. So I'm going to slow down a little bit. I'm sure you've all heard, well, you might have heard about sitemaps. And a sitemap is a technical thing that helps search engines like Google understand, categorize, and navigate the different parts of your website. Essentially, it's a file that allows Google to crawl your website on the back end and see all the good, bad, and ugly about it. This increases the likelihood that the search engine will recommend your website to people searching for your category of products or service, because Google is looking at the back end to see if it's a well-built website. Is it easy to read? Is the content relevant to your audience? Is it like SEO optimized and all that good stuff. A second part to that, where I like to start off with, is creating a visual sitemap. So this will allow you to plan out that navigation component as well as your content needs. And I recommend using a service called gluemaps.com. It's for free. And it allows you to kind of drag and drop and play around with different layouts so that you understand the different sections of your website or your content needs. So for instance, I did a really simple one here of a basic website. You have your home page, and on the home page, your top level navigation is everything that you see above there. And I know my about page is going to be one page. I know my products and service categories. I'm going to need a landing page there. Plus, I'm going to need a page and content for everything under there, etc., and so forth. I know that I need a blog plugin because I put it there. I probably need a gallery plugin because I want to put a gallery. So it really allows you to understand copy, content, plugins, additional functionality that you need. This component is very key if you are especially looking to hire out a developer or an agency of any sort, because they'll, as part of their fact finding, they'll want to know how many pages you want developed, because that directly impacts the scope of the proposal, as well as any additional functionality and plugins you want to put in there, as well as where the copy is coming from and the amount of content that it's coming from. So by doing this and playing around and determining this is what I want to do, this makes sense for my audience, this is the first stage to actually creating, I'll get to next, the content guide. So once you figure it out, I need all of these pages, here's more of a fun part. This is where you get to start thinking about what your layouts and themes are. And I'm going to skip a little ahead and talk about content management systems. So some popular ones out there are Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, for instance, is a huge popular one. And those are all content management system platforms. Each of those content management system platforms might actually have proprietary layouts. That means that those layouts are specific to the content management system. And that if you want that layout, then you have to use them as your hosting provider. While other ones like WordPress that are a little bit more open-ended, and you can move things a little bit more around, and it's a little less rigid. So just keep that in mind. But overall, a website layout is a rough mock-up of the arrangements of the elements on each of your web pages. It's really easy now. A lot of these sites come up with what we call WYSIWYG editors. So what you see is what you get. It's really like drag and drop here, place that there, add text here. So it's really, really nice to do that. If you're doing a more simplistic site, that is definitely something a smaller entrepreneur shop can do. It gets a little bit more tricky when you have a bigger site, as well as you have more complex functionality that you need. That will kind of impact what layout you want to work out and what theme. So getting a rough idea of what your website will need and look like before you build will make your preparation easier and your build faster. As I said before, some content management systems offer preset packages of layouts and theme elements that really work together. Divi is a theme for WordPress that we use for basically as a base for most of our website builds, or a lot of them, because it provides so many customization options for us. So the important thing is, if you pick a theme and you really like how it looks, really go in there and play and learn what the theme's limits are. And most of these theme providers will allow you to go in there and play around with some dummy information so that you can test exactly how it's going to look and function for certain components that you want. And I leave it here with caution. Some content management platforms don't allow you to change themes once applied. So that's why I say Really think about your theme and layout before you start working on it. Test it with smaller pieces of information, because places like Wix, I know for sure, once you decide, hey, I did my entire website, but I don't really like the theme, I want to change it up, it'll wipe the whole thing. Because it happened to me and I was not aware. Next up, you picked your layout. You know generally what it's going to look like. You know the pages that you need. Here is the one part that is going to take you the longest. It takes all my clients the longest. People underestimate, and is the content. So what I recommend to do clients, because it is a big task, right, is to create a content guide based on your sitemap. For every page on that sitemap, create a blank page on a Word document. And place all of your website's content, like text, external web links, and links to images there, and sort it by page. Gather all of your assets and sort them into a folder system that's labeled the same as your pages. We call those image trees. The goal is to have everything gathered in one document of content and one folder system of images, so that's easy access for your web developer, your copywriter, yourself, your team. Otherwise, it's like that piece of content in this email, this piece of content over in that like flash drive, and then, oh, that's not old, we've already updated this. Always keep it in one working document. Typically, you want to include these sections within your pages. It is going to include copy for each paragraph text, your page headings, so your H1s, as well as your subheadings, your H2s. You need to include those in your copy because they are a critical component of your SEO. Meta descriptions, page titles, and keywords, identify those. Those are also your base core level of SEO. If you do not have those on your website, you are getting greatly knocked down, and those have to be done for every single web page. A meta description is essentially a 2 to 3 sentence description of that page entirely. You also want to include links to images and PDFs. Do not paste the image into the Word document. It becomes useless after that. It needs to be in its core original file. You also want to include links to external sites that you want to include, as well as please don't forget any calls to action. Just because you put the information out there, every page needs to have a call to action. You need to constantly tell, remind, and guide your audience of what you want them to do at all times. So don't be shy. All right, and this is the last section, is the basics of website building. It's 4 components. At this point, you've got everything ready, picked it, you're on, just say you're on WordPress, you're feeling really ambitious, and you're ready to build. But are you? Have you, step 1, registered your domain name? Your domain is, think of it as your business's address online. It's typically rented, so you're going to have to pay per year or pay every couple of years, depending on how you do it. You rent them to what's considered domain registrars. Typically, your hosting providers will also be a domain registrar, so you can rent your domain as well as host at the same place. GoDaddy is one of those common providers that does that. This only secures your website name. That does not secure your hosting services. That's completely separate. As I said, this name must be renewed annually at a bare minimum. I encourage you to renew your names at the minimum 2 to 3 year mark, because Google takes that in consideration. It looks like you don't intend to have a permanent business if you have something at a year or less. Be mindful what brands are there that have the similar or same names. Just because your company has let's say you're registered in Manitoba, let's say you even have a registered trademark. So I came from a company with this issue. It does not mean that you own that company name everywhere else in the online. The online, it's its own separate world. So research any companies out there that could have the same or similar names so you could see if you have any potential legal issues on that front. If you can, try to secure both the .com and the .ca versions of your domain name, because in Canada, we tend to do them interchangeably. Keep it as short as possible. Keep it easy to remember and easy to spell. And if possible, I recommend it for anyone who has more of a complicated brand name. If it's commonly misspelled a certain way, also secure that domain name and redirect it to the primary one, just to capture all the people who are just spelling it wrong. So you've got the name, it matches your business name, yes. And now you need to find a hosting provider, because they are going to give you the land for your business, and they're going to give you some utilities so that you can get going. They're not giving you the house, but they're going to give you the land and the utilities. They're like a property developer that's selling you the land with the water. Some hosting providers offer additional services, such as proprietary content management systems, like I mentioned before, email services, security, you name it. Your preferred content management system, or the one identified as best suited for your website build, may also determine who you host with. So if you really, really, really like Wix's way of doing things, you can only host through Wix. Security and supported speeds are actually super critical when you're looking at that, because if you have a very heavy site, or you're going to find a lot of people that are going to it, you have a lot of interactive elements or videos, supported speeds is going to be very critical to you. And if you do a lot of transactions with sensitive information, security is going to be an issue for you. And I have listed here below the common providers of hosting companies. All right, step 3, choose your content management platform. We've already kind of like mentioned it before, but the content management platform or system here essentially is your website construction crew. You've got the land, you've got the services from your hosting provider, you've got names, you've got the plaque to put on that wonderful like website building. You don't have it built yet. So that is what your web builder is. It's your construction crew. The website builders allow for the website construction and maintenance without manual code editing. When I started back in the day, I had to do everything manually. It was painful, but things have improved so far. So they come with pre-designed templates, ready-to-use applications that really simplify the whole website creation process. I will put a little asterisk here. If you have a complex need to have specific functionality, if you're going to have a website that is targeting multiple audiences, that's going to have a shop in there, that you want to have a backend database so that feeds into your CRM system, that's a trigger point that you need to go to an agency. That is a lot of components. And that's where I caution everyone. As soon as you go from simple, that is like, yeah, I just want a couple of pages, maybe a blog and a content form, that's fine. But, or maybe you want a simple shop, right? You just want a couple shop pages and about. I recommend Shopify. It's an amazing shop platform for that. But as soon as you need to start adding more components, different views, crazy functionality and plugins, you want to have a really specific shop experience. Now you're going to the world of custom coding and more advanced functionality. And it's best that you don't do that on yourself. It's also best that you don't rely on a sole developer, because if they leave you during that process, you're kind of stuck. You don't know where they left off. So it's better to go to an agency, because they always have people that can take over the project, multiple resources and experience to handle all of that. And while it might be a little more costly up front, it will actually cost less in the end. And lastly, but not least, is your website guard dog. Now you got your building, you got your sign, you got your land, you got your utilities, you're ready to open the doors, but you need to make sure that your guests and all of your clients are actually safe. And this is something that a lot of people are really confused about. It is SSLs. So they're called secure socket layers. It's a certificate. So it's a very small file that creates an encrypted link between your server where your website is living on, as well as your user browser, so that they can have a trusted connection. And that makes sure that the data entered on the site, like in contact forms, for example, can't be hacked. You can tell which sites have the certificates in the URLs because they either start with an HTTPS, or they might even have that little lock symbol that you'll see. The reason why I bring this up, because it will be an additional cost to your website build that gets flicked on at the end when you're about to go live, is that Google has decided as of last year to punish sites without secure connections to protect users. So it makes it very important, and they will punish you severely. So you can usually get an auto SSL or a simplified SSL for likely less than $100. That will have to be paid per year, but for the benefit of the protection of yourself, your clients, as well as Google being happy, I recommend that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the high levels of all of the steps.
Thank you so very much, Diana. That was really informative. Whenever you talk about this stuff, I learn something new each and every time. The cybersecurity at the end is really important because you don't want, you put all of your hard work and effort into your website and then it gets hacked. Then you have to spend a whole bunch of more time getting your site back, getting back all your content. So doing a little bit of work ahead of time will save you a lot of
headache. And like you might have you might have to apologize to clients and put a crisis communication messaging out there. Skip all that. Get the SSL.
Thank you. That's really good information. We have a lot of questions in the chat, so I'll start with the one that has the most votes. So this person has asked, I love fonts. Just out of curiosity, what's your go-to typeface pair?
We like to do the sans serifs. Actually, in our organization, it's Arial. The Arial font family for the website and most of the printed documents. Yes, for our design environment, when we're doing like pretty stuff, then we have Avenir. I think it's Avenir, something like that. Because it's like a Photoshop product and you put anything in there. But you know what? There's no shame in sticking with the tried and trues. There's nothing wrong with the Helvetica. There's nothing wrong with that. What I say is try to, even if they're not in the same family, have it so that one is really good for titles, so it's a little bit more bolder, and one that is very easy to read without being too thin, because you want to think about accessibility. And then if you have to do something creative and fun, make sure you're not doing a key message with scripted font. It's very hard to read. So you could do short, condensed words with fun font, but not key messages. So I always like to do it where you're visually pairing up some families and saying, yeah, that could work. Yeah, that could work.
Thank you so much. That's really good advice.
No Comic Sans. No Comic Sans. No, I just saw that. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. Comic Sans is only used for children type stuff, and even then it's overdone.
That's I think I'll save the memes for later. I have another question here that says, are there any key differences for nonprofits or volunteer organizations when building their websites?
No, there's no, well, at the end of the day, there's no key differences, because while you're not necessarily selling something, you still have an audience, and you're still asking them to do a behavior. You're still requiring an action for them. So whether it's donate time, donate money, you know, join our organization, become a user of our services or provider of our services. You still have messaging. They still have practical and functional needs. Is that the end product is not necessarily a product, or it's a service, essentially. So, but the nice thing about nonprofit organizations, there are actually programs and services out there that will help you with a little bit of funding toward kickstarting that. And I will send Tina that information later because I know it's around, specifically for your industry, specifically for that.
Thank you for sharing that info. We have another one here that says, I'm just starting out in my career in web development. Do you notice, welcome, do you notice most of your clients prefer a template website like Wix or Shopify, or do they prefer something built from scratch?
I get two types of clients. I get a client who already has a site, and then I ask, what's your site on? So it could be Joomla, it could be Shopify, it could be WordPress. And then we ask, what's wrong with the site? Why do you not want it on that site? And that really determines where we're going to go. But we find a lot, the trend is there's a lot of WordPress sites because they can be so templated, as well as they can be very customized. The industry is going away slowly from Joomla because they're not as supported in the market. A lot of retailers, like small to medium retailers, can really benefit from Shopify because it is, if you're very shop-based, Shopify is the platform for you. If you just like most of my business is going to be 90% of my shop and maybe like about page, maybe like a little fun blog, and that's how you want to run your business, then Shopify is the way to go because it already has all that pre-built functionality. But I'm finding that the most rollers get really, 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 really good with WordPress, and you can do many things.
That's really good advice. Thank you very much for sharing that. I have another question here that says, how do you manage a website when you have more than one key target audience? For example, wholesalers and consumers who have very different priorities.
Yes. So this is when you have the B2B and the B2C audience at the same time. I have so many clients. So you can do it a whole bunch of ways. And it depends on how you want to set up your personal preferences and how you want to set up your system. So let's say you are a vehicle repair shop, picking on one. You service commercial vehicles for businesses, as well as you service personal vehicles. You have the option here, one site, and then there's a it's called the landing page is a self-service portal. One side will be like consumer, and you'll make it all consumer-y, and one side will be for the commercial, and then people can self-identify. They click into one, and they get the commercial experience. And then they click it to the other, and they get taken to a completely different site, and it's the consumer experience. So that separates that. That way, the easiest way to do that is two separate sites because it has to be split up. And I say two separate sites because your navigation is likely to change, and the functionality that you'll want for one versus the other is going to be likely different. If it's not, then there is the option of having what we call it's subdomain. There you go. So they share, if you have your major site and then you have a secondary site, and they both kind of share the same general template and look. That's a slightly cheaper option if they're going to share components. And then the one down from that, because the two sites, it's the most clear and the most flexibility for you to go. It's also the most expensive too, except for one. Second one it's like a 1.5. And you might have some complications growing, but it's still going to be 2 different experiences for your audience. The third one is where you actually combine the audience and say, and identify if there's one audience that's more prevalent. So let's say this business is really doing good on their commercial, but really, really wants to make their mark on the consumer side. Their main website is going to be consumer, all looking. And on the top right, it'll say commercial. You click on that and it'll go to its own commercial section on the exact same site. That's really good for areas where you don't have a lot of commercial content, a lot of commercial business, or you don't need to have a lot of commercial focus because it's a really B2B relationship building kind of situation. But you still want to have a presence. That's a perfect situation to do it that way. And that's the most cost effective. Well, that's more cost effective. The most cost effective way of doing it is identifying your audiences by who you serve. And you can simply put that is if these audiences are kind of sharing the same similar services and products, then you go, you break them down by types of people or types of industries. And on that industry page is like, you will list out the products and services that are most beneficial to that industry. That is the cheapest option to do it. So those are 4 ways to figure that out.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much. That's a lot for us to think about. I appreciate that. We have another question here. It says, what are the essential elements you need in a website? For example, do people really care about your history? Could I just focus on the products that I'm selling and let my social media showcase who I am as a founder?
No. You're assuming that people want to go to your social media. I'm like, it's a good assumption. But I actually tell you, and I have the statistics to prove it, your homepage is number 1, the most important part of your whole site. Your hero section, so everything above the fold, so everything when you first open up a web screen, you first see, that's the most important real estate in your entire website. The second one, surprisingly, is going to be either one of 2 things. It's going to be your about page or about section or your contact. Because at this point, it's like, I've seen this wonderful page. I want to know who you are. I want to know to get in touch with you because they may already have like, yeah, I see your website. I kind of got a thing, but I don't want to go through it. I just want to talk to a real person. So that's why I say it's like you want to make sure that your about story really gives a chance for your brand to establish who they are, their personality, what their intent is, and to humanize that brand in a very personal way. You can add a little video of yourself. You can add a little video of your team doing their stuff. You know, like go crazy on this page. You can be as creative as you want, share as much as you want. That's kind of like a page where you can just have at her. And then on your home page, you got that hero section, which is below your nav. That I always recommend, you know what? That is where your key messaging needs to go. If you can only say 3 things to your audience, those are going to be your top 2 to 3 slides. Please don't go past 3 slides because nobody's going to read them. Mm-hmm. I like to go 2 slides usually to give them time to actually read it and then process whether or not they want to click on it. And I like to switch it out per month and see like, you know, who's clicking what, right? And then finally, I would say, other than your products and services page, is if you have the supporting content. So this may come in forms of frequently asked questions. It might be a resource section where they have PDFs, the technical stuff. It might be a blog. This is the area where you're providing additional information that doesn't necessarily fit on your product or service pages, but is going to fill in all of the blanks for your audience, because chances are a lot of our society is this, they want to educate themselves before they come to you. And these all count as marketing touch points, which is amazing because it takes about 10 to 20 touch points, consuming pieces of information for them to come and touch you. So as long as you have all like those sections on there, give them lots of things to read and digest. That is amazing because that provides you also a foundation of what you're going to put on your social profiles. Because on your social profiles, the full brand story doesn't necessarily always get communicated. And depending on who's doing your social media at what time, might necessarily be all the right messaging. So the website is really where you can like really lock it down.
Thank you. So it's homepage, about us, contact page, and products and services, and an FAQ are the most important ones.
Yes. Make it easy.
Perfect. Make it easy. Awesome. Thank you. Another question here that says, do you need to buy a font for your website, just like photos or a logo?
The standard web fonts are free for most of them. Actually, for all of them, the standard web fonts. I like to try to stick with the standard web fonts because those are ones that are most likely to be able to see across all screens. If you're buying a font, this is how it goes. If you buy that font, you must embed it. And as soon as you embed it, Google cannot crawl it because now it's part of like a picture or something else. Because if it's being, your page is being viewed I don't know, some Australia, I'm picking Australia, and they don't have access to that font, then Google is going to try to switch it to something that is reasonable, and you can choose what it switches to in that case. But to me, it's just better pick a font that's already web safe. Stick with web safe, and then anything that you want to get creative on, make it part of the picture.
That's really good advice. Thank you.
But buy your pictures and
buy pictures
because you will get in trouble for that.
Yes. Yeah. Google, when you Google search, just because there isn't a cash register there doesn't mean you don't pay for them. So there's lots of free and royalty-free websites you can go to. I think we'll pop some into the chat because I know that we were talking about it earlier. Yeah. There's like Pexels and a few others. We have 2 more questions left. One says, one is asking, what are some of the best marketing books or podcasts you could recommend to a founder?
HubSpot.
Okay.
I recommend if like you want to get like a deep dive in the world of marketing everything, HubSpot is a really good brand. They're very good at sharing all different aspects. They've got little courses. They've got a great community. I recommend starting with that, like a HubSpot. And then once you get into it, it's really, if you decide to go down and build it yourself, a lot of those platforms will provide excellent resources. There's lots of YouTube videos. Oh my goodness, let me tell you, everybody wants to be a YouTuber. There's never going to be a lack of information. So I would say go to those resources, start there first, and just kind of get a basic idea of what the lay of the land is, and then identify what you have natural aptitudes in and what you don't have natural aptitudes in. If you don't have a natural aptitude in it, you're not going to be interested. It's going to be harder. And that is definitely something that you are like, okay, I need to delegate this to someone else so that you can actually focus your time on something that you're good at, and that, you can take other parts of your business. It's really hard to do it. Yeah, it's really, really hard to do it all at once. And I'm finding sometimes I talk to it when it's a small group even doing it, they get really focused on birthing the website. Essentially it is. But they get really narrow-minded and focused and strapped and warped into it, and they really don't see the rest of it, right? So just get a little tip of toe in there, and then decide what you're going to do and not going to do, because it's not all of it.
That's really good. Just focus on the things that you're good at and what things that you like, because it can be overwhelming to do everything.
Yeah, it will be overwhelming. Yeah.
Absolutely. And our last question is, somebody's asking, how do I get people to go to as many pages as possible on my website, or is that important?
Well, it depends on what the goal of your website is. If you have a content-based site where you want them to consume content, like you're a blog writer or you're an artist or something like that, then yes, you want them to consume as many pages as possible. But if you want them to go to specific pages because you want a desired result, then it's a matter of making the navigation easy, putting those calls to actions that are guiding them, and like repeating it throughout the page, especially if it's a long page, and allowing them those extra touch points and say, you know, call us today for this, or free trial this, or sign up for a newsletter that, or check out this page for more information, or like look at this cart for this product. Like lay it out, like, you know, paint by numbers for them. But just keep in mind that unless you have a content consuming site, the goal of your site to be the most effective path toward the end result. Otherwise, your audience is just going to be like, I don't want to click this much, okay? I just want to get to where I want to go to and get this done.
I gotcha. Well, thank you so much for answering all the questions. Thank you, everybody, for asking them all. And now, just let me get to my script here. Very sorry. I lost my spot. Here we go. So, on behalf of our audience and our community, thank you for joining us. And on behalf of the Manitoba Women in Tech Organizing Committee, we really hope that you found value in today's meetup. As always, we would love to hear your feedback on the event and any suggestions that you have for future meetups. If you could take a moment to fill out our post-event survey, you'll find a link in the chat, and it will also be emailed to our members afterwards. Make sure to look out for our Manitoba Women in Tech emails and updates about our 2022 events through the Meetup platform. We have one last event coming next month for the season before we take a break for July and August and then start up again in September. We'll be sending our Meetup members an email next week with the info, so stay tuned for the details. And thank you all for coming out this evening, and to all the ambassadors and promotional partners for your support. And thank you to our amazing executive committee, Juliette Greenberg from New Media Manitoba and Lauren Wheeler from Tech Manitoba, our funding partners, for making these events possible and for helping me be the pace setters for this evening. Please feel free to stick around and network and chat with those at your table, or you can hop to another table. And the REMO event will stay open till 8:45, where the application will close. And we look forward to seeing you soon at the next event. Okay, take care, everybody. Talk soon.